and welcome to healthyhouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support our show, please use our Amazon affiliate link below. Today we are checking in with Lucy, who has been in a spider plant revival series for a while now, and she is doing really well, as you can see, but it is time to pot her up into her fourth pot. The last time she was repotted in this pot that she's in right now was a little over a year ago. We started this revival in 2019. You can look back and see how puny she was at that point. And as you can tell now, she's looking good, but she does need to be put into a new pot. Some of the signs of that, she dries out pretty quickly nowadays, and she is also get a little bit nutrient deficient, just on the slight side of that, a little bit less vibrant of color in her leaves, so that's a good indication that it is time for her to be repotted. So that's what we're going to do right now. And I have a assortment of pots, and as I always talk about, you don't want to go up more than 1-2 sizes max with a pot. So this one is a little bit, maybe a little bit too big, but we're going to see. This one could be a good size. I have a feeling that this one's going to be the one we want because it is bigger, but not too much bigger. And I'm pretty sure this one is too small. It's hard to tell, but this has one of those built-in lips, but we'll be able to tell more once I get her out of here. And so here we go on getting her out of here. I'm going to start with that. Sometimes you have to, you can tap on the side of the table a little bit. You do want to before you start this process as well. So a slight tapping a lot of times will knock the plant loose. If not, you need to get a knife, which I show in another one of my, or you can get something like scissors. I do have scissors available. So something like that you can push along the side to loosen it a little bit. And I have a video on how to do this when they're really stuck in the pot. I think she's just about there, but sometimes you just have to find that side on the pot where they're still stuck, and gently do this. These scissors, I'm just using the one blade. You don't want to use both. You want it as thin as possible. A knife that also bends is even better, kind of like a cheap bendy knife that's sharp-ish though. So this is the first part. I did water her well before, so that's another thing that will help them come out of the pot, and also you want them to be watered before you work on repotting them so that their leaves are full of moisture, because they are going to go into a little bit of a shock when you repot them. They're not going to be drinking as much at that point, so it's better to have watered them first before you do this. Now let's see how we're doing here. So turning her upside down, she is still not wanting to come out. So there's always this is always a challenge. Oh, there she goes. So knocking gently, I mean, you can see it was a little bit tap, kind of wild tapping there, but not too bad. So on the edge of a table really does work well. Okay, now we see what's really going on in here in terms of her roots. And we see how much root mass she actually has. You really can't tell till you take the plant out. So it's better to have a few different sizes of pots available so that you don't have the wrong size pot. One thing you definitely don't want to do is pot up into the wrong size pot. So you can see she has a nice root system, very healthy root system, but as you can see, it's not a huge, and it's not not like it's been too overgrown where there's a ton. She's not real tight in the pot, but she definitely was ready for this repotting. So the next question is, which size of these pots? What you want is, I talk about in videos, and I'll put the link below, 2/3 root mass to 1/3 soil in the new pot. So you don't want a ton of space in the new pot, because what will happen is that wet soil will get very, very wet and stay wet because there's not enough roots to absorb the moisture, and that's how root rot can set in. So you definitely want to avoid that with any plant that you're repotting. I do have a root rot playlist that tells you more about that too. So right now, and another thing to consider too, is that spider plants like to be root bound, meaning they like to be tight in their pots. That's how they grow the best. So if you've had a spider plant that you put in a big pot and it didn't do well, that's your reason right there. So that being said, I'm going to want to definitely stick to the 2/3 root mass to 1/3 pot ratio, whereas there's 1/3 pot soil left and 2/3 soil, 2/3 root for this plant. So that being said, I'm going to see how she does. So this one is going to be almost the same. It looks really nice though. The colors look, I like the color combo. They didn't have this one in a bigger pot. I think this one, and as you can see by these two pots, are pretty much the same size. So we do want to go up a little bit bigger, but not too much bigger. This one's too big. It's just too much bigger. These two are similar, so I'm going to put her in here. A lot of space left in there. Be very careful when you're picking the plant up. You definitely want to try to hold it from underneath it rather than on top, because the weight of the root mass could pull it off of the plant, and there you go, right? Okay, so this one is a little bit, it's almost the same as that one as mentioned. I think it's a little bit better. So now another option you can always do too is you can just repot in the same size pot with new soil, because the plant needs new soil as well. However, she was drying out quite a bit even after she started growing after a few months. So I am going to go up a pot size. So now I'm going to compare these two pot sizes here, these two pots. So the rim is about the same. This one's a tad bit smaller. They're very, very close. This one I would say is a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go with this one here, and I think it's going to be a good match for her. So I am putting in drywall tape on the bottom on that drainage hole. You definitely want to make sure you have a drainage hole. So that's going there. And then what you want to do when you're repotting, well, you need new soil obviously, and I have this new soil that I'm adding some of my Green Gourmet houseplant food to. And I'll put a link for that below, as well as some worm compost. I really like the worm compost to add when I'm repotting. A lot of the time I do that. And I have videos on that too. Okay, so mixing this in. This is a really good soil with good drainage, although it's also water retentive. I also moistened this soil before I got started so that you don't want to pot up with dry soil. Once you do and you water, your plant will no longer be in the correct position when the pot, it will most likely sink below, and you don't want that to happen. Okay, so when you're repotting a plant, usually you want to do about 2 to 3 inches on the bottom. With a plant that likes their tight roots, I would say about 2. So let's see how that does. If you find that you are putting in tons and tons of soil on the bottom of that pot, it is too big. You're better off putting the plant back into the pot it was in and going to get the right size pot. You can, if you've planted into too big of a pot, plant into a smaller pot. The sooner you do that, actually, the better. Okay, so that was about 2 inches, perfect. And she's got plenty of room along the sides here for me to add soil. So Looks like this is going to be a good sized pot. Now, I did really like her old pot in terms of the color scheme. That the green, the stripes on that was really cool. It mimicked her stripes. So this one, I think it'll still look nice. So it's an attractive pot. Now you can see I'm still putting in quite a bit of soil. So even when you have that 2/3 root mass to 1/3 soil, you still will find yourself adding a fair amount of soil, but you just won't be adding tons and tons of soil. The good news about planting in the right size pot too is you aren't spending, the bigger the pot, the more expensive they are, and the more soil you need to put in. So you're going to be saving money doing it this way too, and also in the end saving a lot of money because you won't be replacing plants from being in too big of a pot. So we want to make sure too that she's kind of hanging over one side a little bit more. So as you repot, gently kind of working on that too in terms of getting her to hang over all sides when possible. Sometimes it requires a little bit of staking, which I might want to do. Also, when you're putting the soil in, make sure as you push down the sides that you get it all the way down and there are no holes in there. Those would be air pockets. What will happen with the air pockets is it will dry out the roots of the plant and it will kill off the roots in that area. You could literally get root rot from that because what happens is the roots die back, then the plant doesn't have enough roots in there, and then there's too much wet soil and the root rot process begins. So sometimes too, underneath things like underneath this one heavier area, when you mound up the soil as you need to get enough soil in there, that will also help hold the plant up. So I am doing that right now. Now you want about 1/4 of an inch all the way along the inside, around the inside of the pot left over when you're done putting the soil in, so that when you water, the soil doesn't overflow all over the place, but actually goes into the pot and gets to the root zone. That's very common to put too much soil in. If you have done that, hopefully the roots are covered. If the roots are covered and you can take out a little bit of soil and the roots are still covered, you're okay. If you do that and you take out some soil and the roots are exposed, you really should repot, reconfigure it a little bit, make sure the plant is down far enough into the soil, and then do some repotting. Okay, so she's looking good here. And then an even distribution of the soil as well is very important, because if there's a slope, then all the water is just going to slope to that one area, and then the rest of the roots will not get watered, and you will have a similar problem as I talked about with the pockets. The roots will dry out. So as you could see, quite a bit new soil going into Lucy here, and she is doing well here. Exciting to see her revitalized here. And it seems like with the amount of soil I put in, it wasn't too much, but there was new soil for her to grow roots in and grow bigger in, that it was the right choice. So when you repot too, you can look for any little stray leaves that are done, like that one, just to make them look pretty. Cleaning out the pot a little bit. Okay, so now what I want to do, now that I have repotted her, and you can see how pretty she's looking in the pot, I may do a slight bit of it, or just encourage the plant, instead of staking, just to grow around the whole thing, around the whole pot there. Now after you do repot, even though you've used moist soil, you always want to water. And you want to water, ideally, until the water starts coming out of the drainage hole. And that will tell you that you've watered the plant nicely, given it a really good soaking. And usually you only have to wait for a few drips. I think that's starting to happen in a second here. Now I won't probably be watering her for a good week or two even, there it goes, so it's coming through now. As she acclimates to the new pot and the new soil, then she will begin growing again. As I mentioned, they kind of start out, they're just in a little bit of a plant of a shock in terms of being repotted, which is very normal. Some plants will lose leaves when that occurs. Generally speaking, the spider plants don't do that, but some plants will when they're acclimating, so that's common. But she should be pretty much look the way she does, except that the soil will stay moist for a while, and then when it starts to dry out, I know she's starting to drink again, and it will dry out some from the atmosphere as well. But at that point, though, I'll know too that she is drinking. And then when you start to see some new growth, that is an indication the plant is accustomed to the new pot, it's acclimated, it's all ready to go and produce a lot of new growth. We're in a good time of year for that too as well. So here she is looking good. Say hi to Lucy, and we will check in with her again as she gets bigger and bigger. I like to keep her on this pedestal so that her fronds, her leaves, can hang over the edge. So careful when one thing you can have problems with is the tips getting stuck underneath the pot, and that kind of messes them up. So you can cut the tips off, but ideally if that doesn't occur, that's a better thing for the plant, and then they stay good, and the plant has a chance to grow nicely that way too, on some sort of and it could be we're cutting a lot of water there. It could be from a pie, like from a shelf or something too. So there you go, Lucy in her new digs, in her new pot, all ready to go, looking good. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos are released.